Blood sprayed across the trauma bay window before anyone could react. The young nurse they'd been pushing around for 18 months didn't flinch, just stepped forward with the kind of calm that doesn't come from textbooks. Dr. Marcus Webb barely glanced her way as he barked orders, treating her like she'd graduated yesterday. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the hands he kept dismissing had once held together a soldier's torn chest at 12,000 feet while rounds punched through the aircraft hull. Tonight, that soldier was coming back through their doors, and the woman they'd underestimated was about to shatter everything they thought they knew. Don't go anywhere. Stay with me until the very end of this story. And when you do, drop a like and comment with your city so I can see how far this journey has traveled. The fluorescent lights in Sterling Grace Medical Center's emergency department hummed like they always did, constant, unforgiving, exposing every crack in the linoleum and every stain on the walls. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday in Minneapolis, and the waiting room still held 6 people: a kid with a skateboard injury, an elderly man clutching his chest, a woman who wouldn't stop coughing. Inside Trauma Bay 3, Sarah Calloway wiped down the gurney for the second time that hour. 29 years old, slight build, dark blonde hair pulled back tight. She moved efficiently, methodically, the way she'd been taught, the way she'd always moved. Calloway. She turned. Charge nurse Rita Vance stood in the doorway, arms crossed, expression flat. When you're done playing janitor, we need IV starts in 6 and 8. The real nurses are handling actual patients. Sarah kept her face neutral. I'm certified for... I know what you're certified for. Rita's voice could cut glass. I also know you've been here a year and a half and still act like you don't know which end of a stethoscope to use. Stick to the basics. The words landed like they always did. Sharp, precise, designed to remind Sarah exactly where she stood in the department's hierarchy. She nodded once. Rita left without waiting for a response. Sarah finished sanitizing the bay, then moved to 6. The patient was a college student, dehydrated from food poisoning. Sarah inserted the IV catheter on the first attempt, smooth and clean. The student barely felt it. You're good at this, the girl said weakly. Sarah smiled. Just practice. She didn't mention that she'd placed IVs in sandstorms while helicopters landed 20 feet away. Didn't mention the practice had come from situations where missing the vein meant someone bled out before you got another chance. She taped the line, checked the flow, made her notes. Dr. Marcus Webb breezed past in the hallway, white coat billowing, talking loudly into his phone about a golf game. He was 42, Harvard-trained, and treated the ER like his personal stage. He'd been at Sterling Grace for 3 years and made sure everyone knew he could have worked anywhere. Sarah, he called without looking at her. Coffee. 2 sugars. It wasn't a question. She found herself in the break room 2 minutes later, pouring coffee she didn't want to pour, adding sugar she didn't want to add. This wasn't what she'd signed up for, but it was what she'd gotten. The radio on the wall crackled. Sterling Grace, this is Medic 7. We're inbound, ETA 4 minutes. Male, approximately 35, construction accident. Impalement injury, right thigh. Vitals unstable. Requesting trauma activation. Sarah's hand stopped moving. The voice continued. Patient's name is Kyle Brennan. Repeat, Kyle Brennan. The coffee cup slipped. She caught it before it hit the floor, but liquid sloshed over the rim, scalding her hand. She didn't feel it. Kyle Brennan. The name hit her like a fist. She set the cup down carefully, turned off the burner, and walked into the hallway. Her heart was hammering, but her breathing stayed controlled. Steady, the way it had been trained to stay. The trauma bay exploded into motion. Dr. Webb appeared from somewhere, suddenly serious, suddenly focused. Rita barked orders at 2 other nurses, prepping equipment, clearing space. The attending physician, Dr. Laura Sinclair, arrived and started snapping out assignments. Sarah stood near the wall. Rita saw her. Calloway, you're on documentation. Stand in the corner, write down what we do. Don't touch anything unless I tell you to. You can do what I tell you to do. The ambulance backed into the bay. Doors flew open. They wheeled him in fast. Sarah saw the impalement first, a jagged piece of rebar, maybe 8 inches visible, punched clean through his right quadriceps. Blood soaked through the makeshift dressings. His face was pale, slick with sweat, but it was his face, 7 years older, harder. A scar along his jawline that hadn't been there before. but the same dark eyes, same square jaw, same expression he'd worn when she'd told him he wasn't going to die even though they both knew he might. Kyle Brennan. Sergeant Kyle Brennan, 3rd Battalion, 10th Special Forces Group. The last time she'd seen him, he'd been on a stretcher in a C-130 cargo hold over Kandahar province, gut shot and barely conscious, whispering his daughter's name while Sarah worked to keep his blood inside his body. Now he was here, and he hadn't seen her yet. Dr. Webb took control immediately. Okay, people, let's move. Get me vitals, labs, 2 large-bore IVs, and someone call surgery. This is going straight to the OR. Kyle groaned. The paramedic rattled off handoff information, blood pressure dropping, heart rate climbing, estimated blood loss significant. Sarah stayed against the wall, clipboard in hand, pen frozen. One of the newer nurses fumbled the IV start. The vein blew. She swore under her breath, tried again. Missed. Jesus Christ, Webb muttered. Someone competent, please. Rita stepped in, got the line on the 3rd attempt. Kyle grimaced but didn't cry out. Sarah watched his chest rise and fall. Too fast. Shallow. His skin had a grayish tint under the lights. She'd seen that tint before. Her eyes dropped to his abdomen. It was rigid, distended. Her breath caught. "Doctor," she said quietly. Webb didn't hear her. He was focused on the leg, examining the impalement site, talking to Dr. Sinclair about extraction technique and vascular involvement. "Doctor," Sarah repeated louder. He glanced at her, irritated. "What?" "His abdomen. It's rigid." Webb looked at Kyle's stomach for half a second. "He's got a piece of rebar through his leg, Calloway. Of course he's tense." "No, I mean, document what I'm doing. That's your job." Rita shot her a warning look. Sarah's jaw tightened. She stepped back, but she didn't stop watching. The team worked fast. X-rays confirmed the rebar hadn't hit the femoral artery, a miracle. But the wound itself was catastrophic. They started fluids, pushed pain meds, prepped him for transport. Kyle's eyes drifted around the room, unfocused, struggling to stay open. Then they landed on Sarah. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his brow furrowed. His lips moved, forming a word he didn't have the strength to say. Sarah looked away. "All right," Dr. Webb announced. "Let's get him upstairs. Surgery's ready." They started wheeling the gurney toward the door. That's when the monitor screamed. Kyle's blood pressure dropped like a stone, 90/50, then 80/45. Alarms shrieked. "Shit!" Webb hissed. "He's crashing. Stop the gurney." Chaos erupted. Rita grabbed the crash cart. Dr. Sinclair started barking orders. Someone called for more blood. Kyle's skin went from gray to white. Sarah pushed off the wall. "Check his abdomen," she said, voice cutting through the noise. Webb spun on her. "I don't have time for—" "He has internal bleeding. Check his abdomen now." Something in her tone made him stop. Maybe it was the certainty. Maybe it was the fact that she'd stopped sounding like the timid nurse they all ignored. Dr. Sinclair grabbed the ultrasound probe. 10 seconds later, her face went pale. "Free fluid in the abdomen," she said. "Significant. He's bleeding internally." The room went silent, except for the alarms. Webb stared at the screen, then at Sarah. "How did you—" "It doesn't matter." Sarah moved to Kyle's side, her hands already reaching for the IV line to increase the flow. "He needs surgery now, not in 5 minutes. Now." Rita opened her mouth to say something, but Dr. Sinclair cut her off. "She's right. Move. Get him to OR2. Tell them we're coming in hot." The team surged into motion. The gurney flew through the hallway, nurses running alongside, hands stabilizing lines and bags and monitors. Sarah ran with them. She didn't ask permission. Kyle's eyes found hers again. This time they stayed. "I know you," he whispered. Sarah's hand closed around his. "Stay with me. Keep your eyes open." That voice. "Don't talk. Just breathe." Afghanistan. His voice was barely audible. "The plane." Her throat tightened. The elevator doors opened. They shoved the gurney inside. Dr. Sinclair, Dr. Webb, 2 nurses, and Sarah. Rita tried to follow. "No room," Sinclair said. "Next one." The doors closed on Rita's furious face. Kyle's grip on Sarah's hand tightened. "You stayed. Everyone else left, but you stayed." Sarah felt every eye in the elevator on her. "I'm staying now," she said quietly. The elevator rose. Kyle's breathing hitched. His pressure was still dropping. They were losing him. "Talk to me," he gasped. "Like before. Keep talking." Sarah leaned closer. "You're going to be fine. You've survived worse than this." "The ambush. I thought I was dead." "You weren't. You fought. You wouldn't let me die." Tears leaked from the corners of his eyes. "You kept saying my daughter's name, Emily. You kept saying Emily needed her dad." Dr. Webb and Dr. Sinclair exchanged glances. "She still does," Sarah said. "So you're going to fight again." The elevator doors opened to the surgical floor. The OR team was waiting. They transferred Kyle in seconds, rolling him through the double doors into the sterile bay. Sarah started to follow. A nurse stopped her. "Family only past this point." "I'm not family." "Then you can't—" Kyle's voice cut through, stronger than it should have been. "She's coming in." The surgeon looked up, surprised. "She stays," Kyle said. His eyes locked on the surgeon. "She's the reason I'm alive the first time." "She stays." The surgeon looked at Dr. Sinclair, who nodded. They let Sarah through. She scrubbed in, gowned up, stood in the corner of the OR while they put Kyle under, while they opened his abdomen, while they found the bleeder, a torn mesenteric vessel that would have killed him in minutes if they hadn't caught it. The surgery took 4 hours. Sarah didn't leave. When they finally closed him up, when his vitals stabilized, when the anesthesiologist said he was going to make it, Sarah felt her knees wobble for the first time all night. Dr. Sinclair walked over. "You saved his life," she said simply. Sarah shook her head. "You did the surgery?" "We wouldn't have known to look if you hadn't pushed." Sinclair paused. "How did you know?" Sarah pulled off her gloves. "Experience? What kind of experience does a second-year ER nurse have with combat-related internal trauma?" The room went quiet. Sarah met her eyes. The kind you get when you're not a second-year ER nurse. Before Sinclair could respond, the OR door swung open. Rita stood there, face flushed with anger. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Calloway? You don't have OR privileges. You don't have trauma certification. She diagnosed an intra-abdominal bleed that everyone else missed," Dr. Sinclair interrupted. "If she hadn't, we'd be calling the family right now to tell them he didn't make it." Rita's mouth snapped shut. Dr. Webb appeared behind her, looking shaken. "I need to know," he said quietly. "Who are you?" Sarah pulled off her surgical cap. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders. 7 years ago," she said, "I was a flight nurse with the 455th Expeditionary Aeromedical Evacuation Squadron. I flew medevac missions out of Bagram and Kandahar, critical care transport, combat zones." The room was so silent you could hear the ventilator hissing. "That patient downstairs was one of mine. He took shrapnel to the gut during an ambush in Helmand Province. We flew him out under fire. I kept him alive for 3 hours until we got him to a surgical hospital." Rita's face had gone white. "The military called me Ghostlight," Sarah continued, voice steady, "because I worked night flights, and because nobody died on my watch." Dr. Webb looked like he'd been punched. "Why didn't you tell anyone, Mum?" Sinclair asked. Sarah's expression didn't change. "I did. It's in my file. But nobody reads files when they've already decided what you are." She walked past all of them, out of the OR, into the hallway. No one stopped her. She made it to the women's locker room before her hands started shaking. She sat down on the bench, staring at the tile floor, trying to breathe through the adrenaline crash. The door opened. Dr. Sinclair walked in. "I read your file," she said quietly. "Just now. 3 tours, 18 months in country, 2 air medals, a commendation medal, 47 critical transports." Sarah said nothing. "You left the service 4 years ago. Honorable discharge. Came to sterling grace with references that should have put you in charge of the damn department." Sinclair sat down beside her. "What happened?" Sarah finally looked up. "People see what they want to see. I'm young, I'm quiet, I don't play politics, so they see someone who doesn't know what she's doing. Rita's been blocking you. Rita's been doing her job the way she understands it. That's generous." "It's true," Sarah's voice was tired. "She thinks I'm inexperienced. She thinks she's protecting patients. She's not malicious. She's just, Wrong. Sinclair stood. She's going to have to face being wrong because this doesn't stay quiet. I don't want you. It's not about what you want anymore. Sinclair's tone was firm but not unkind. You diagnosed a life-threatening injury that 2 attending physicians missed. You stayed calm in a crisis. You have a military record that belongs in a textbook. The hospital is going to ask questions. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. I just want to do my job. Then do it, but stop hiding what you're capable of. Sinclair left. Sarah sat alone in the silence. 20 minutes later, she changed back into her scrubs and went to check on Kyle. He was in the ICU, still sedated but stable. The monitors beeped steadily. His color was better. Sarah stood at the foot of his bed, watching the rise and fall of his chest. A woman appeared in the doorway, mid-30s, red-eyed, clutching a purse. Are you the nurse? She asked. Sarah nodded. The woman stepped closer. I'm Rachel, Kyle's wife. They said someone caught something the doctors missed, that he almost died. He's stable now. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. They said you knew him. From before. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Thank you. Rachel's voice broke. Thank you for bringing him home again. Sarah felt her throat tighten. He's strong. He did the hard part. Rachel wiped her eyes. There's a little girl downstairs, Emily. She's 9 now. She wants to meet the nurse who helped her dad. Sarah's breath caught. Emily. The name she'd whispered over and over during that flight, using it like a lifeline, anchoring Kyle to the world when he wanted to let go. I'll come down, Sarah said softly. She followed Rachel to the family waiting area. Emily sat in a plastic chair, swinging her legs, clutching a stuffed rabbit. She looked up when Sarah approached. You helped my dad? She asked. Sarah knelt down. I did. Mom said you helped him before too, a long time ago. That's right. Emily hugged the rabbit tighter. Thank you for not letting him die. Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. You're welcome, she whispered. She stayed with them for a few minutes, then excused herself and walked back into the ER. It was 6:15 a.m., shift change. The department was buzzing. Word had spread fast. Nurses she'd never spoken to stared at her as she passed. Residents whispered. Even the unit secretary looked at her differently. Rita was at the nurses' station, face tight. She didn't say anything. Sarah logged into the computer, started reviewing charts. Dr. Webb appeared beside her. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. Sarah kept typing. You don't. I do. I dismissed you. I treated you like you didn't know what you were doing. You didn't know. I should have. His voice was strained. I should have listened when you spoke up. I almost killed that man because I was too arrogant to hear you. Sarah stopped typing, looked at him. Confidence saves lives, she said. Arrogance buries them. Learn the difference. Webb flinched. She went back to her charts. He walked away. The rest of the shift passed in a haze. Patients came and went. Sarah worked through them with the same calm efficiency she always had. But now, people were watching. By the time she clocked out at 7 a.m., the hospital administrator had left 3 messages asking her to come to his office. Sarah ignored them. She drove home through the early morning light, parked in her apartment complex, climbed the stairs to her unit. Inside, she locked the door, dropped her bag, and sat on the couch. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Sinclair. They're opening an investigation into Rita's supervisory conduct, and they want to talk to you about a promotion. Call me. Sarah set the phone down. She stared at the wall. For 18 months, she'd kept her head down, followed orders, stayed quiet. And in one night, everything had shifted. She thought about Kyle, unconscious in the ICU, alive because she'd trusted her instincts. She thought about Emily, clutching her rabbit, grateful her father was still breathing. She thought about Rita's face when the truth came out. And she thought about Dr. Webb, who'd built his career on confidence, now facing the fact that he'd nearly killed someone because he wouldn't listen. Her phone buzzed again. Another text. This one from a number she didn't recognize. She opened it. This is Rachel Brennan. Kyle woke up an hour ago. First thing he said was your name. He wants to see you. Sarah closed her eyes. The past had come back, and this time she wasn't running from it. She stood, grabbed her keys, and headed back to the hospital. Because some debts don't get paid with silence. They get paid with truth. And the truth was finally coming out. The ICU was quiet when Sarah pushed through the double doors at 8 a.m. She'd gone home, showered, changed into clean clothes, but she hadn't slept. Couldn't. Her mind kept replaying the moment Kyle's eyes had found hers across the trauma bay. The recognition, the shock, the impossible collision of two lives that should never have intersected again. Kyle was awake when she reached his room. Propped up at a 30-degree angle, IV lines running into both arms, oxygen cannula in his nose. His face was still pale, but his eyes were clear, alert. Rachel sat in the chair beside him, holding his hand. She stood when Sarah entered. "I'll give you two a minute," Rachel said softly, squeezing Kyle's shoulder before slipping out. Sarah moved to the foot of the bed. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Ghost light," Kyle finally said. His voice was rough, scratchy from the breathing tube they'd removed an hour earlier. Sarah's chest tightened. "Nobody's called me that in a long time. I never forgot it. Never forgot you." He shifted slightly, winced. 7 years. I looked for you after I got stateside. Tried to find you through the VA, through veteran networks. You just disappeared. I needed to. Why? Sarah pulled up the chair Rachel had vacated, sat down. "Because I was tired of war. Tired of blood. Tired of watching people die." Her voice was steady but quiet. "I did 3 tours, Kyle. 47 critical transports. You were number 31. After I got home, I couldn't sleep without seeing their faces. All of them." Kyle's expression softened. "PTSD? They called it that. I called it reality catching up." She looked at her hands. "I left the service, moved to Minneapolis, changed my last name, started over as someone nobody knew, just another nurse. No history, no war stories." "Calloway isn't your real name?" "It's my mother's maiden name. Sarah Calloway sounded like someone who'd never seen combat. Someone who could blend in." She met his eyes. "It worked. For 18 months, nobody knew. Nobody asked. I was just the quiet girl who did what she was told." Kyle shook his head slowly. "You saved my life twice now. And they've been treating you like you don't know which end of a thermometer to use. People see what they expect to see. That's not an excuse." "No," Sarah agreed. "It's not." The monitor beeped steadily between them. Outside the room, a nurse walked past, glanced in, kept moving. "Emily wants to thank you properly," Kyle said after a moment. "She's been talking nonstop since Rachel told her you were the nurse from the stories." Sarah blinked. "You told her about Afghanistan? Told her about the angel who wouldn't let me quit? Told her about the voice that kept saying her name when everything else went dark?" His voice cracked slightly. "She's 9 now, smart as hell. Asks questions I don't always have answers for, but when she asked if angels were real, I told her yeah. I met one." Sarah felt her throat close up. "I'm not—" "You are to me." Kyle's gaze was unwavering. "You are to everyone you've saved, however many that is." 47, Sarah said quietly. 48 now. 48 people breathing because of you. That's not nothing." Before Sarah could respond, the door swung open. Dr. Sinclair stepped in, tablet in hand, followed by a man Sarah didn't recognize. 50s, gray suit, hospital ID badge clipped to his pocket. "Ms. Calloway," Sinclair said. "This is Richard Garrett, Sterling Grace's chief operating officer. He'd like a word." Sarah stood. "About?" Garrett's expression was unreadable. "About your employment here, and about certain concerns that have come to light regarding departmental oversight." He glanced at Kyle. "Mr. Brennan, we'll need to borrow Nurse Calloway for a bit. We'll have her back shortly." Kyle looked at Sarah, worry flickering across his face. She gave him a small nod. "I'll be fine," she said. She followed Garrett and Dr. Sinclair out of the ICU, down 2 floors, into a conference room she'd never been inside before. The kind of room where decisions got made, where careers got built or destroyed. 3 other people were already seated at the table. Sarah recognized one of them immediately. Dr. Marcus Webb, looking like he hadn't slept either. The other 2 were unfamiliar. Hospital brass, probably. People who dealt with liability and lawsuits and public relations. "Please sit," Garrett said, gesturing to a chair. Sarah sat. Garrett remained standing. "Miss Calloway, we've spent the last 4 hours reviewing your personnel file, your military service record, and the incident from last night. We've also reviewed footage from the trauma bay and spoken with multiple staff members. Sarah kept her expression neutral. She'd been in enough military debriefings to know when to stay quiet. What we've found, Garrett continued, is deeply concerning. Not regarding your conduct was exemplary, but regarding the culture of this emergency department and the way you've been treated since you started here. Dr. Webb shifted uncomfortably in his seat. One of the other administrators, a woman with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, leaned forward. I'm Patricia Morrow, Director of Human Resources. I need to ask you directly. Have you been subjected to discriminatory treatment, harassment, or professional sabotage during your time at Sterling Grace? Sarah chose her words carefully. I've been assigned tasks below my certification level. I've had my assessments and recommendations dismissed or ignored. I've been excluded from learning opportunities and advancement discussions. By whom? Primarily charge nurse Rita Vance, also by Dr. Webb and several senior staff members. Webb flinched but didn't interrupt. Did you file complaints? Morrow asked. No. Why not? Sarah met her eyes. Because I didn't think anyone would listen, and because I wanted to keep my head down and do my job. Even when that job was being artificially limited? Even then. Garrett set his tablet on the table. Ms. Calloway, last night you diagnosed a critical injury that 2 attending physicians missed. According to Dr. Sinclair's report, if you hadn't identified the internal bleeding, Mr. Brennan would have died en route to surgery or shortly thereafter. Sarah said nothing. Dr. Webb, Garrett said, turning, you were the attending on record. Do you agree with that assessment? Webb's jaw tightened. He looked at Sarah, then back at Garrett. Yes, I missed it. I was focused on the obvious injury and didn't consider secondary trauma. Nurse Calloway's intervention saved the patient's life. And when she first raised the concern, I dismissed her. Webb's voice was flat. I told her to do her job and stay out of the way. Why? Because I didn't think she knew what she was talking about. Because I assumed she was inexperienced. He paused. Because I was wrong. The room went silent. Morrow made a note on her legal pad. Dr. Webb, were you aware of Ms. Calloway's military service record when you dismissed her assessment? No. Was it your practice to review personnel files for the nurses you worked with? No. Why not? Webb's face darkened. Because I assumed competency would be demonstrated through performance, not credentials. And you didn't see competent performance from Ms. Calloway? I didn't look for it, Webb admitted, and the words seemed to cost him something. I let other people's opinions shape my own. Charge Nurse Vance treated her like a junior staff member, so I did the same. Morrow's pen scratched across the paper. That's going to be a problem, Doctor. Garrett turned back to Sarah. Ms. Calloway, we've also reviewed Charge Nurse Vance's supervisory record. There's a pattern of behavior that extends beyond your case. Preferential treatment for certain staff members, assignment inequities, resistance to protocol changes suggested by nurses she deems too young or inexperienced. Does that align with what you've observed? Sarah hesitated. This was the line. Once she crossed it, there was no going back. Yes, she said. Can you provide specific examples? Sarah took a breath. 3 months ago, a nurse named Jennifer Park suggested a new triage protocol based on research from Johns Hopkins. Rita dismissed it without review because Jennifer had only been in the department for 6 months. 2 weeks ago, Rita assigned me to restock supply closets for an entire shift, while 2 less experienced nurses handled critical patients. Last month, she told a physician assistant that I wasn't ready for trauma cases, despite my certification and background. Morrow wrote faster. Did anyone witness these incidents? Multiple staff members. It wasn't hidden. It was just normal. Dr. Sinclair, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. I've witnessed some of this firsthand. I didn't intervene because I assumed it was a nursing hierarchy issue, not my lane. That was a mistake on my part. Garrett nodded slowly. Mistakes have been made at multiple levels. We're going to address all of them. But first, Ms. Calloway, I need to know, do you want to continue working here? The question hung in the air. Sarah looked around the table, at the administrators with their legal pads and careful expressions, at Dr. Webb, who couldn't quite meet her eyes, at Dr. Sinclair, who looked genuinely remorseful. I want to work where I'm allowed to use my training, Sarah said finally, where my assessments are heard, where competency matters more than politics. That's fair, Garrett said. We're going to make some changes, starting today. He opened his tablet, pulled up a document. Effective immediately, you're being reassigned from general ER duties to the trauma team. Full certification review, skills assessment, and integration into the critical care rotation. Dr. Sinclair will supervise your transition. Sarah's breath caught. You'll also be receiving back pay for the differential between your current role and the role you should have been assigned based on your qualifications. We're talking about 18 months of underpayment. HR will have the exact figures by end of week. Morrow looked up from her notes. Additionally, we're offering you the opportunity to participate in the investigation into departmental culture and supervisory practices. Your testimony will be kept confidential, and there will be no retaliation. Sarah's head was spinning. What happens to Rita? That's still being determined, Garrett said. But she's been placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. Dr. Webb will be undergoing mandatory peer review and supervisory training. Webb nodded stiffly. One more thing, Garrett added. We'd like you to consider a position on the hospital's Quality Improvement Committee. We need people who aren't afraid to speak up when they see problems. People who put patient safety above department politics. Sarah sat back in her chair, trying to process everything. 18 months of being invisible, and now this. I need time to think, she said. Of course. Take the weekend. We'll reconvene Monday morning. Garrett stood, signaling the meeting was over. And Miss Calloway? Thank you for what you did last night and for what you've been doing quietly for the past year and a half. This hospital is better because you're here. Sarah left the conference room in a daze. The hallway seemed brighter, louder, more real than it had an hour ago. Dr. Sinclair caught up with her at the elevator. You okay? Sinclair asked. I don't know, Sarah admitted. This doesn't feel real. It's real, and it's deserved. Sinclair pressed the elevator button. For what it's worth, I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening. I should have paid more attention. You weren't responsible for me. I was responsible for making sure my department functioned properly. I failed at that. The elevator arrived, doors sliding open. I won't fail again. They rode down in silence. When the doors opened on the ICU floor, Sinclair stepped out first. Take the weekend, she said. Rest. Process. Come back Monday ready to actually do the job you were trained for. Sarah watched her walk away, then headed back to Kyle's room. He was asleep when she arrived, but Rachel was still there, flipping through a magazine. How'd it go? Rachel asked quietly. They're promoting me, Sarah said, still not quite believing it, and investigating everyone who held me back. Rachel smiled. Good. About damn time someone recognized what you're capable of. Sarah sank into the visitor's chair. I don't know if I'm ready for this. You kept my husband alive in a war zone. You diagnosed an injury that trained doctors missed. I think you're more than ready. Rachel set down the magazine. Kyle told me about Afghanistan, about what you did for him. I was doing my job. You went above and beyond your job. The other medics wanted to leave him behind. You refused. Rachel's eyes were bright. He said you held pressure on his wound for 2 hours straight, wouldn't let anyone else take over, talked to him the entire time. Sarah remembered. The blood, the darkness, the sound of the engine screaming as they climbed altitude, Kyle's eyes rolling back, his pulse thready under her fingers. I wasn't going to let him die, Sarah said quietly. You didn't. Twice now. Rachel reached over, squeezed Sarah's hand. Emily wants to draw you a picture. She's very serious about it. Says it has to be perfect because you're a hero. I'm not. You are, Rachel interrupted gently. To us, you absolutely are. Sarah stayed for another hour, sitting in the quiet room, watching Kyle sleep. His color was better, his vitals were strong. He'd make a full recovery. Number 48. She left the ICU at noon, drove home, and collapsed on her couch. Her phone buzzed constantly. Texts from coworkers she barely knew, messages of support, questions about what had happened in the administrator's office. She ignored all of them. She needed silence, needed to think. But thinking was dangerous, because thinking led to remembering, and remembering led to the faces she'd spent 4 years trying to forget. The soldier who died in her arms over Kabul, bleeding out from a wound she couldn't fix. The pilot who'd coded 3 times during a medevac flight, who she'd brought back each time, only to lose him 10 minutes after landing. The ones who lived because she wouldn't quit. The ones who died anyway. 47 saves and 11 losses. Nobody talked about the losses. They celebrated the saves, gave you medals, called you a hero. But the losses stayed with you, lived in your chest, woke you up at 3 a.m. with their faces burned into your memory. Sarah closed her eyes. Her phone rang. She almost didn't answer, but the caller ID showed Dr. Sinclair. Hello? Sarah, we have a situation. Sinclair's voice was tight. I need you to come in. Sarah sat up. What kind of situation? Rita's attorney just filed a formal complaint alleging wrongful administrative leave and defamation of character. She's claiming you fabricated your military service to discredit her supervisory record. The words hit like cold water. What? She's demanding an immediate third-party verification of your credentials and threatening legal action against both you and the hospital. Sinclair paused. Can you come in? We need to address this now. Sarah was already grabbing her keys. I'm on my way. She made it to the hospital in 12 minutes, parked illegally, and ran inside. Garrett's office was on the 4th floor. When Sarah arrived, the door was open. Garrett was on the phone, his face red. Morrow sat across from him, laptop open, typing furiously. Dr. Sinclair stood near the window. She turned when Sarah entered. Rita's lawyer is claiming your DD-214 is fraudulent, Sinclair said without preamble. They're alleging you used a fake military record to gain employment and are now using it to destroy her career. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. My DD-214 is real. Everything in my file is real. I know, but she's demanding verification through official military channels, and she's threatening to go to the press if we don't provide it within 24 hours. Garrett hung up the phone. Ms. Calloway, I need you to understand the position this puts us in. If we can't verify your service record immediately, this becomes a public relations nightmare. Hospital hires fake veteran, real nurse gets punished for exposing fraud. That's the story she's going to sell. So verify it, Sarah said. Contact the Air Force Personnel Center. Contact Bagram Air Base. Contact... We're trying, Morrow interrupted, but military records take time, especially for personnel who served in combat zones. We're talking days, maybe weeks. I have my discharge papers, my medals, my... Rita's attorney is claiming those can be forged. They want official verification from the Department of Defense. Garrett ran a hand through his hair. And they want it now. Sarah felt the ground shifting under her feet. So what are you saying? I'm saying we need to put everything on hold until we can definitively prove your service record. The promotion, the investigation, all of it. You're suspending me. We're asking you to take voluntary leave while we sort this out. That's the same thing. Garrett's expression was pained. It's protection, for you and for the hospital. If this goes public before we have proof, you'll be destroyed. Your career will be over. My career is already over if you let her do this, Sarah shot back. She's calling me a liar, a fraud, and you're letting her. We're not letting her do anything, Morrow said firmly. We're being strategic. Give us 72 hours to get the verification we need. Then we move forward with everything we discussed this morning. And if you can't get verification in 72 hours? Nobody answered. Sarah looked at Dr. Sinclair. You believe me, right? Sinclair didn't hesitate. Yes, completely. But it doesn't matter. Not until we can prove it in a way that holds up legally. Sarah felt something cold and familiar settle in her stomach. The same feeling she'd had when she'd decided to leave the military. When she'd realized that no matter what she'd done, no matter how many lives she'd saved, she was still just a number in a system that didn't care. I have someone who can verify, she said quietly. Garrett looked up. Who? Kyle Brennan. He's a witness to my service. He was my patient. He knows who I am. A patient's testimony won't be enough, Morrow said. Rita's attorney will argue he's biased, that you coached him. Then what will be enough? Morrow met her eyes. Official documentation from the Department of Defense. Nothing less. Sarah turned and walked out of the office. She made it to the stairwell before the anger hit. She slammed her fist into the concrete wall, felt skin split, didn't care. 18 months of silence. One night of truth. And now this. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through her contacts, found a number she hadn't called in 3 years. It rang 4 times before a gruff voice answered. Colonel Hayes. Sir, this is Lieutenant Sarah Vance, former 455th Expeditionary Aeromedical Evacuation Squadron. A pause. Vance, thought you fell off the map. I tried to, didn't work. Sarah took a breath. Sir, I need a favor. She explained the situation in clipped, precise sentences. No emotion, just facts. Hayes listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You still have your flight logs? He finally asked. Yes, sir. Photographs, documentation, anything that puts you in country with dates and times? Some. Most of it's packed away. Get it. All of it. Send me everything you have. I'll make some calls. His voice hardened. Nobody calls one of my people a liar, especially not some pencil pusher who's never seen a day of combat. Sarah felt her throat tighten. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get ugly. Military records are locked down tight post 9/11. Getting expedited verification means pulling strings I haven't pulled in years. I understand. No, you don't. But you will. Hayes paused. Vance, why the hell didn't you list me as a reference when you applied to this hospital? Because I was trying to disappear. Well, you're visible now. Better get comfortable with it. He hung up. Sarah stood in the stairwell, phone in her bleeding hand, and felt the weight of everything crashing down. She'd saved Kyle's life twice. She'd exposed a broken system. She'd done everything right. And now she was the one being questioned. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Kyle's asking for you. Says it's important. Sarah wiped the blood off her knuckles, pocketed her phone, and headed back to the ICU. Kyle was sitting up when she arrived, looking more alert than he had that morning. Rachel stood near the window, arms crossed, expression worried. They're trying to bury you, Kyle said as soon as Sarah walked in. Word traveled fast. They're verifying my record, Sarah said carefully. Bullshit. They're caving to political pressure. Kyle's jaw was set. Rachel told me what's happening. Rita's claiming you're a fraud. Hospital's backing down. They need proof. You are the proof. I'm the proof. Kyle grabbed the bed rail, trying to pull himself higher. I'll testify. I'll go on record. It won't be enough, Sarah interrupted gently. They need official documentation. Then we'll get it. I'm working on it. Kyle stared at her, and she saw the same stubborn determination that had kept him alive in Afghanistan, the same refusal to quit. You saved my life, he said quietly, twice. I'm not going to sit here and watch them destroy yours. Before Sarah could respond, the door opened. A man in a suit stepped in, followed by a woman with a camera. Mr. Brennan, the man said. I'm David Fletcher, WCMH News. We're doing a story on the alleged fraud case at Sterling Grace Medical Center. Do you have a moment to comment? Sarah's blood went cold. Rachel stepped forward. Get out. Now. Ma'am, this is a matter of public interest. We've received reports that a nurse with fabricated military credentials... I said get out! Rachel's voice could have cut steel. Kyle hit the call button. Security. Now. But the damage was done. Fletcher smiled. We'll be running the story tonight at 6. If you'd like to provide a statement... Hospital security arrived and escorted them out. Sarah stood frozen. It was happening. The story was going public, and she had no way to stop it. Rachel turned to her, face pale. They're going to crucify you. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Colonel Hayes. Turn on the news, channel 88, now. She pulled out her phone, found the live stream. A reporter stood outside Sterling Grace, microphone in hand. Allegations that a nurse employed here falsified her military service record to gain employment and has now sparked an internal investigation that's led to the suspension of a longtime charge nurse. Hospital administrators have refused to comment, but sources close to the situation say documentation proving the nurse's service cannot be verified, raising serious questions about... Sarah stopped listening. She looked at Kyle, then at Rachel. I need to go, she said quietly. Where? Kyle asked. To find proof they can't ignore. She walked out of the ICU, out of the hospital, into the parking lot where news vans were already gathering. A reporter spotted her, started moving in her direction. Sarah got in her car, locked the doors, and drove. She didn't stop until she reached her apartment. Inside, she went straight to the closet, pulled down a box she hadn't opened in 4 years. Inside were her dress blues, her medals, her flight logs. And beneath all of it, a photograph. 47 people standing in front of a C-130 somewhere in Afghanistan, the 455th Expeditionary Aeromedical Evacuation Squadron, her family. Sarah stared at the faces. Some she'd stayed in touch with, most she'd lost track of, but they were out there, and they would remember. She pulled out her laptop, opened her email, and started writing. To anyone from the 455th who remembers Ghostlight, I need your help. She hit send, then sat back and waited. Within 20 minutes, the first response came, then another, then 10 more. And by the time the sun set, her inbox was flooded. The squadron was mobilizing, and Rita had just made the worst mistake of her life. The first email that came back was from Major Lisa Kendrick, who'd flown missions with Sarah for 8 months straight in 2018. Ghostlight, heard you needed backup. What do you need? Where do you need it? When? Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard. Sterling Grace Medical Center, Minneapolis, tomorrow morning if possible. Bring anyone who remembers. Bring proof. Kendrick's response came 30 seconds later. I'm in Fort Worth. I'll be on a plane by midnight. Captain Rodriguez is in Chicago. He's coming too. We're making calls. Sarah stared at the screen, something tight unwinding in her chest. She wrote back, thank you. Don't thank me. We don't leave people behind. You taught us that. More emails flooded in. Captain James Rodriguez, Lieutenant Amy Thornton, Master Sergeant Derek Willis. Names she hadn't heard in years, voices she'd thought were lost to time and distance. They were coming. All of them. Sarah pulled out her phone, called Colonel Hayes back. Sir, I have witnesses. Active duty and veterans from the 455th. They're flying in tomorrow. Hayes grunted. Good. I've got the personnel center pulling your records now, but it's going to take 48 hours minimum for official verification. Your people showing up in person might buy you the time you need. What about the news? What about it? Let them run their story. Let them call you a fraud. When the truth comes out, it'll hit 10 times harder. His voice turned sharp. But Vance, you need to understand something. Once this gets big, it doesn't go away. Your quiet life, your anonymity, that's over. Sarah looked around her apartment, the blank walls, the minimal furniture, the life she'd built specifically to be forgettable. I know, she said. You ready for that? She thought about Kyle in the ICU, about Rita's lawyer calling her a liar, about Dr. Webb's dismissal and the 18 months of being invisible. Yes, sir. Then get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a war. Sarah didn't sleep. She spent the night pulling together everything she had. Her DD-214 discharge papers, her air medal certificates, her flight logs, 47 missions documented in her own handwriting, each one with dates, times, patient names, and outcomes. Photographs from Bagram, from Kandahar, from aircraft holds and makeshift trauma bays. At 4 a.m., her phone rang. Rachel. Turn on the TV, Rachel said without preamble. Channel 8. Sarah grabbed the remote, flipped to WCMH. The news anchor sat at her desk, expression grave. Breaking developments in the Sterling Grace Medical Center controversy. Documents obtained by this station show that Sarah Calloway, the nurse at the center of the allegations, legally changed her name 4 years ago from Sarah Vance. Hospital sources confirmed that background checks were conducted using her current legal name, which may have obscured her military service record. Questions remain about whether this constitutes fraud or simple administrative oversight. Sarah's stomach dropped. They'd found the name change, and they were spinning it as deception. Her phone started ringing. Unknown numbers, reporters, probably. She ignored them all. At 6 a.m., she showered, dressed, and drove to the hospital. The parking lot was chaos. 3 news vans, reporters with cameras, a small crowd of protesters holding signs that read, Stolen Valor and Fire the Fraud. Sarah parked in the far lot, walked in through the emergency entrance. Inside, the atmosphere was toxic. Staff members whispered in clusters. Some stared at her. Others looked away quickly. She headed straight to Garrett's office. He was already there, looking like he'd aged 5 years overnight. Morrow sat across from him, laptop open. Dr. Sinclair stood by the window. "Ms. Calloway," Garrett said when Sarah walked in, "we need to talk." "I have people coming," Sarah said. "Veterans from my squadron. They're flying in today to verify my service." Garrett's expression didn't change. "That's appreciated. But we have a bigger problem." Morrow turned her laptop around. On the screen was a local news website. The headline read, "Military Nurse or Masterful Liar. Sterling Grace Scandal Deepens." Below it was Sarah's photo, pulled from the hospital website, next to a picture of Rita looking dignified and professional. Sarah's jaw clenched. "Rita's attorney gave an interview this morning," Morrow said. "She's claiming you deliberately concealed your identity to hide a fabricated military record. She's also alleging that you coached Kyle Brennan to support your story." "That's insane. Insane or not, it's effective. We've had 17 calls from concerned patients this morning. The board of directors is meeting in 2 hours to discuss whether you should be terminated immediately." Sarah felt the floor tilt. "Terminated? Pending verification of your credentials, yes." Garrett rubbed his face. "I'm sorry. I know this isn't fair, but the hospital is in crisis mode. We have to protect our reputation." "By throwing me to the wolves." "By following protocols," Morrow corrected. "If your credentials check out, you'll be reinstated with full back pay and a formal apology. But until then, I'm the villain." Nobody contradicted her. Sarah turned and walked out. She made it to the bathroom before her hands started shaking. She gripped the sink, stared at her reflection in the mirror. This was how it ended. Not with recognition, not with justice. With her name dragged through the mud by someone who'd spent 18 months making her invisible. The bathroom door opened. Dr. Sinclair walked in. "Don't," Sarah said. "Whatever you're about to say, just don't." Sinclair leaned against the wall. "I was going to say I quit." Sarah looked up. "What?" "I submitted my resignation 20 minutes ago, effective immediately." Sinclair's voice was calm, but her eyes were hard. "I'm not working for a hospital that eats its own to avoid bad press." "You can't." "I can, and I did." Sinclair crossed her arms. "I've been in medicine for 19 years. I've seen a lot of injustice. But this? Watching them destroy you to protect themselves? I won't be part of it." Sarah felt something crack in her chest. "You'll lose everything. I'll lose a job. You're losing your name." Sinclair pushed off the wall. "I'm not going quietly either. I'm calling every medical board contact I have. Every journalist who will listen. I'm telling them exactly what happened here." "That'll make it worse." "For them, maybe. Not for you." Sinclair headed for the door, then stopped. "Your squadron, when are they getting here?" "Sometime this morning." "Good. I'll be here when they arrive. Someone needs to be." She left. Sarah stood alone in the bathroom trying to process what had just happened. Dr. Sinclair had quit. For her. She pulled out her phone, checked her email. 32 messages from the 455th. People she'd served with, people she'd saved, people who'd watched her work under conditions most civilians couldn't imagine. They were all coming. At 9 a.m., Sarah was sitting in the hospital cafeteria when her phone rang. Major Kendrick. "We're here," Kendrick said. "All 7 of us." "Where do you want us?" Sarah felt her throat tighten. 7? Rodriguez, Thornton, Willis, Captain Stevens, Lieutenant Park, Sergeant Morrison, and me. We flew in overnight. We have documentation, we have witness statements, we have photos. Kendrick's voice turned fierce. "And we're ready to go to war for you." Sarah gave them directions to the main entrance. 15 minutes later, she watched from the second-floor window as 7 people in military dress uniforms walked through the hospital's front doors. The lobby fell silent. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing. Major Kendrick, tall, black, decorated ribbons across her chest, stepped to the front. "My name is Major Lisa Kendrick, United States Air Force, 455th Expeditionary Aeromedical Evacuation Squadron. I'm here to provide testimony regarding Lieutenant Sarah Vance, formerly of our unit. Any questions about her service record can be directed to me." The reporters erupted. "Is it true she fabricated her credentials? Did she ever serve in Afghanistan? How do you respond to allegations of stolen valor?" Kendrick's expression could have frozen fire. "Lieutenant Vance served 3 tours in Afghanistan. She flew 47 critical care transport missions under combat conditions. She saved lives that other medics had written off. She was one of the best flight nurses I've ever worked with, and anyone calling her a fraud can answer to me. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. I flew with Lieutenant Vance for 14 months. I have mission logs, photographs, and witness statements from medical personnel at Bagram and Kandahar. We're prepared to provide all of it to hospital administration. Sarah watched from above, tears blurring her vision. They'd come. They'd actually come. Dr. Sinclair appeared beside her. Your people? Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. Good, Sinclair said quietly. Now let's go down there and finish this. They took the elevator to the lobby. When the doors opened, Kendrick saw Sarah and her entire demeanor shifted. Ghost light, she said, and pulled Sarah into a tight hug. The others surrounded them. Rodriguez grinning, Thornton wiping her eyes. Willis standing at attention like they were back on base. We got you, Kendrick said. Whatever you need. Garrett appeared, looking shell-shocked. Miss Calloway, if these individuals could come with me to provide their statements. We're not going anywhere private, Kendrick interrupted. We're doing this right here, in front of everyone. She pulled out a folder, opened it on the reception desk. Mission logs from July 2018 through March 2020, she said, loud enough for the reporters to hear. 47 documented medevac flights. Every single one has Lieutenant Vance's signature. Every single one has witness verification from medical personnel at receiving hospitals. Rodriguez added another folder. Photographs from Bagram Air Base. Lieutenant Vance is clearly identifiable in 37 of them, standing beside aircraft, working trauma bays, conducting pre-flight briefings. Thornton pulled out a tablet. Commendation letters from commanding officers, performance reviews, training certifications, everything cross-referenced with official Air Force records. The reporters were scribbling frantically. Garrett looked like he was drowning. This is highly irregular. So is calling a decorated veteran a liar, Kendrick shot back. We're here to set the record straight. Lieutenant Vance served with distinction. She saved lives, and she deserves a hell of a lot better than what you've given her. One of the reporters pushed forward. Major Kendrick, can you confirm that Sarah Calloway and Sarah Vance are the same person? I can confirm that the woman standing right here, Kendrick pointed at Sarah, flew medevac missions with me in Afghanistan. I watched her stabilize a soldier with a collapsed lung at 10,000 feet with nothing but a chest tube and determination. I watched her talk a 19-year-old kid through the worst pain of his life while we flew through a sandstorm. I watched her refuse to give up on patients everyone else had written off. So yeah, that's Lieutenant Vance. That's Ghostlight. And if you're calling her a fraud, you're calling all of us liars. The lobby was dead silent. Then Captain Rodriguez spoke. We have something else, he said, pulling out a laptop. Video footage from a medevac flight in September 2019. Helmet cam from the aircraft commander. Lieutenant Vance is clearly visible treating a critically injured patient during a combat landing. He opened the laptop, turned it so the reporters could see. The footage was grainy, shaky, but unmistakable. Sarah in flight gear, working over a patient on a stretcher, her hands moving with precision while the aircraft bucked and swayed. Her voice came through the audio, calm and steady, talking the patient through the pain. One of the reporters gasped. Sarah watched herself on the screen. She remembered that flight. The patient had been a Marine, 19 years old, hit by an IED. She'd lost him anyway, 10 minutes after they landed, number 6 on her list of losses. The video ended. The lobby was absolutely silent. Then Garrett cleared his throat. If you'd all come with me, we can review this documentation in a more appropriate setting. No, Sarah said. Everyone turned to look at her. No, she repeated, louder. We're doing this here, in front of everyone. No closed doors, no private meetings. You wanted proof? Here it is. Now you deal with it publicly. Garrett's face went red. Miss Calloway, this is not... My name is Lieutenant Sarah Vance, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. I changed it legally 4 years ago when I left the service because I wanted a fresh start. I disclosed my military background in my employment application. I provided my DD-214. I listed my certifications. Everything was documented. If Sterling Grace failed to verify that information, that's on you, not me. She turned to the reporters. I came to this hospital because I wanted to help people. I've been doing that for 18 months, even while being treated like I didn't know what I was doing. Last night I diagnosed a critical injury that saved a patient's life. Instead of being recognized for that, I'm being called a fraud by someone who spent a year and a half undermining my work." One reporter raised her hand. "Are you referring to charge nurse Rita Vance?" "Yes." "Do you believe her allegations are retaliatory?" Sarah met the woman's eyes. "I believe she's trying to destroy my career to save hers. And I believe this hospital was willing to let her do it until my squadron showed up." Garrett looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Morrow appeared, phone pressed to her ear. She ended the call, turned to Garrett. "The board wants an emergency meeting. Now." "We're in the middle of... Ooh. Now," Morrow repeated. "Colonel Hayes from the Air Force Personnel Center is on the line. He has official verification." The lobby erupted. Sarah's heart stopped. Garrett looked at her, then at the squadron members, then at the reporters. "Conference room," he said tightly. "Everyone, now." They moved through the hospital like a military procession. The squadron surrounded Sarah, a protective wall of uniforms and solidarity. Reporters followed, cameras rolling. The conference room was too small for everyone. People stood along the walls. Garrett sat at the head of the table, Morrow beside him with her laptop open and phone on speaker. "Colonel Hayes," Garrett said, "we have you on speaker. Several members of the press are present, as well as personnel from Ms. Vance's former squadron." Hayes's voice came through, gruff and official. "I pulled Lieutenant Sarah Vance's complete service record from the Air Force Personnel Center. I'm transmitting it now to the email address provided." Morrow's laptop pinged. She opened the attachment. Sarah watched her face change as she scrolled. "Service dates August 2017 through June 2021, Hayes continued. 3 combat deployments to Afghanistan. Assigned to the 455th Expeditionary Aeromedical Evacuation Squadron. 47 documented critical care transport missions. 2 air medals. 1 commendation medal. Honorable discharge with full benefits." Morrow turned the laptop so Garrett could see. His face went pale. "The record is verified," Hayes said. "Lieutenant Vance served with distinction. Anyone questioning that is questioning the integrity of the United States Air Force. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear," Garrett said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Good. Lieutenant Vance, are you on this call?" Sarah stepped forward. "Yes, sir." "You did good work, Lieutenant. Don't let anyone tell you different." "Thank you, sir." Hayes disconnected. The room was silent. Then one of the reporters spoke up. "Mr. Garrett, does this mean Rita Vance's allegations were false?" Garrett looked like he was chewing glass. "It means we have verified Ms. Vance's service record and found it to be accurate and complete." "What happens to Rita Vance?" "That's a personnel matter under investigation." "What happens to Sarah Vance?" Garrett turned to Sarah. His expression was complicated, shame, relief, calculation all mixed together. "Ms. Vance, on behalf of Sterling Grace Medical Center, I offer our sincerest apologies for the treatment you've received. Your service record is verified. Your credentials are confirmed. We would like to reinstate you immediately to the trauma team with full back pay and benefits." Sarah stared at him. 18 months of dismissal, 2 days of hell. And now this. "I don't want your apology," she said quietly. Garrett blinked. "I'm sorry? I don't want your apology. I want accountability." Sarah looked around the room. "Rita Vance didn't act alone. Dr. Webb dismissed my assessments. Senior staff excluded me from training. Administrators failed to review my credentials properly. This wasn't one person's failure. It was systemic." Morrow leaned forward. "What are you asking for?" "I'm asking for a full review of the emergency department's culture and practices. I'm asking for transparent reporting on how staff are evaluated and promoted. I'm asking for mandatory training on recognizing and addressing professional bias." Sarah's voice was steady. "And I'm asking that Rita Vance be held accountable for her actions, not just shuffled to another department where she can do this to someone else." Garrett and Morrow exchanged glances. "Those are extensive requests," Garrett said carefully. "They're necessary ones," Dr. Sinclair interjected. She'd been standing near the back, arms crossed. "I submitted my resignation this morning because I refuse to work for an institution that allows this kind of toxic behavior. But if Sterling Grace actually commits to meaningful change, I'll rescind it." Garrett's eyes widened. "Dr. Sinclair, I wasn't aware he... Now you are." Sinclair's tone was ice. You have a choice. Make real changes or watch your trauma department collapse. Because I guarantee you, once this story goes national, good people won't want to work here. One of the reporters was typing frantically on her phone. Garrett looked at Morrow, who gave a small nod. We'll implement the review, Garrett said. Full audit of departmental practices, third-party consultants, transparent reporting, and Ms. Vance, Rita Vance, will face formal disciplinary proceedings up to and including termination. In writing, Sarah said. By end of business today. Agreed. Sarah turned to her squadron. Thank you for coming. I know what it cost you. Kendrick shook her head. We'd do it again in a heartbeat. You're one of us. Rodriguez grinned. Besides, someone had to remind these people who they were messing with. The reporters surged forward with questions, but Sarah pushed through them, heading for the door. She needed air. She made it outside into the parking lot where protesters had been earlier. They were gone now, replaced by curious onlookers and more news crews. Sarah kept walking until she reached her car. She sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, and let the adrenaline drain out of her. It was over. The verification was done. The truth was out. She'd won. So why did she feel so hollow? Her phone rang. Kyle. She answered. Hey. I watched the whole thing on the news, he said. Your squadron showed up like the damn cavalry. Yeah. You okay? Sarah laughed, but it came out shaky. I don't know what I am. You're a hero, again, whether you want to be or not. I never wanted that. I know, but that's what you are. Kyle's voice softened. Come up to the ICU. Emily's here. She finished her drawing. Sarah closed her eyes. I'll be there in a few minutes. She ended the call, took a long breath, and headed back inside. The ICU was quiet compared to the chaos downstairs. Kyle was sitting up, looking stronger. Rachel sat beside him, and Emily stood at the foot of the bed, holding a piece of construction paper. Emily looked up when Sarah walked in. I finished it, she said seriously. She held out the drawing. Sarah took it carefully. It was a picture of a plane, clearly a military transport, with a figure standing at the open door. The figure had a halo drawn above her head in yellow crayon. At the bottom, in careful child's handwriting, Thank you for saving my dad. You are a real angel. Sarah's vision blurred. It's beautiful, she whispered. Emily beamed, Rachel stood, walked over, and hugged Sarah without warning. You did it, Rachel said quietly. You proved them all wrong. Sarah hugged her back, not trusting her voice. When Rachel let go, Kyle held out his hand. Sarah took it. Twice now, he said. You've saved my life twice. I don't know how to repay that. You don't have to. Yeah, I do, and I will. His grip tightened. However long it takes. Sarah smiled, small and tired. Just get better. That's enough. She stayed for another hour, talking with them, watching Emily color more pictures, letting the normalcy of it wash away the toxicity of the morning. When she finally left, the sun was setting. She drove home, parked, climbed the stairs to her apartment. Inside, she set Emily's drawing on the counter, made tea she didn't drink, and sat on the couch. Her phone buzzed. An email from Garrett. Attached was a formal letter of reinstatement, an apology, and a detailed plan for the departmental review. Everything she'd asked for. In writing. Sarah set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. She'd fought. She'd won. But as she sat there in the quiet of her apartment, she realized something. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Because the story had gone national. Her face was on the news. Her name, both of them, was public. The life she'd built to disappear? Gone. And somewhere in the city, Rita was watching the same news coverage. Sarah's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? A woman's voice, tight with barely controlled rage. You think you've won, Rita said. You think because you brought your military friends and got the hospital to cave, this is over. Sarah's stomach clenched. Rita, I've worked at Sterling Grace for 12 years. 12 years of building my reputation, and you destroyed it in 2 days. You did that yourself. No, you did it by lying about who you were, by hiding behind a fake name, by manipulating everyone into thinking you were some kind of hero. Sarah's hand tightened on the phone. I never lied. Everything in my file was true. You're a fraud. Rita hissed. And I'm going to prove it. Your squadron can show up. Your colonel can verify records. But I know the truth, and I'm going to make sure everyone else does too. The line went dead. Sarah sat frozen, phone still pressed to her ear. Rita wasn't done, and whatever was coming next was going to be worse than anything that had come before. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table, Rita's voice echoing in her head, and tried to figure out what came next. The threat had been vague, but real. Rita wasn't the type to make empty promises. At 6 a.m., Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Sinclair. Check the news, now. Sarah grabbed her laptop, pulled up WCMH's website. The headline made her blood run cold. Whistleblower nurse claims hospital covered up medical errors to protect veteran employee. Below it, Rita's face. Professional headshot. Concerned expression. Sarah clicked the article. Rita Vance, a 12-year veteran of Sterling Grace Medical Center's emergency department, has come forward with allegations that hospital administrators suppressed multiple patient safety complaints to avoid scrutiny of Sarah Vance, a nurse whose military background recently made national headlines. I raised concerns about patient care multiple times, Rita stated in an exclusive interview. But every time I tried to address issues, I was told to back off because Sarah had influential friends. The hospital was more interested in protecting their hero story than protecting patients. Rita Vance has provided documentation of 3 incidents where she claims Sarah Vance made clinical errors that were subsequently covered up by hospital leadership. Sarah's hand shook as she read. Rita had flipped the narrative, turned herself into the victim. The whistleblower fighting against a corrupt system that protected Sarah at patients' expense. It was a lie, all of it, but it was a convincing lie. Sarah's phone rang. Garrett. Have you seen it? He asked without preamble. I'm reading it now. She's claiming we covered up medical errors. She's provided incident reports, patient charts, heavily redacted, but enough to look damning. The board is in emergency session. They want answers. Those reports are fake, Sarah said, or they're taken out of context. I know, but we have to prove it. And Rita's lawyer is smart. They filed everything with the state medical board. There's going to be an investigation. Sarah felt the walls closing in. What does that mean for me? It means you're on administrative leave again, effective immediately, until the medical board clears you. You said, I know what I said, but my hands are tied. If we keep you working while there's an active investigation, it looks like we're protecting you. That's exactly what Rita's claiming. Sarah ended the call without responding. She sat in silence, staring at Rita's face on the screen. This was how it worked. You fought back, and they changed tactics. You proved one lie wrong, and they invented a new one. Her phone buzzed again. Major Kendrick, saw the news. We're not done fighting. What do you need? Sarah stared at the message. What did she need? She needed the truth, not just about her service record, but about everything Rita had done. She pulled up her contacts, scrolled until she found a name she hadn't called in months. Jennifer Park. The nurse Rita had dismissed 3 months ago for suggesting protocol changes. Jennifer answered on the second ring. Sarah? I saw what happened. Are you okay? No, but I need your help. Sarah took a breath. You tried to report Rita before, right? For the way she treated staff? Yeah, got nowhere. HR said it was a personality conflict, told me to work it out with her directly. Do you still have documentation? Everything. Emails, incident reports, witness statements from other nurses. I kept it all in case I needed to file a formal complaint. Can you send it to me? Why? Because Rita's trying to bury me with fake medical errors. I need to show the pattern, that she's done this before. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. She's going to come after me too if I do this. I know, and I won't ask if you're not willing. Send me your email, Jennifer said. You'll have everything in an hour. True to her word, the files arrived at 7:43 a.m. Sarah opened them one by one. Emails from Jennifer to HR, documenting Rita's dismissive behavior toward younger staff, incident reports showing how Rita had blocked protocol improvements, witness statements from 3 other nurses describing similar treatment, and buried in the middle of it all, something else. A patient complaint from 8 months ago. A family had reported that their father, admitted with chest pain, had been undertreated because Rita had overruled a junior nurse's recommendation for immediate cardiac monitoring. The patient had coded 6 hours later. He survived, but barely. The complaint had been filed with the hospital's Patient Safety Committee, and according to the attached email chain, it had been dismissed after Rita provided a statement claiming the junior nurse had misread the EKG. Sarah pulled up the patient's chart. The junior nurse's name was listed in the documentation, Michael Torres. Sarah didn't know him personally, but she knew he'd left Sterling Grace 4 months ago. She found his LinkedIn profile, sent him a message. Michael, this is Sarah Vance from Sterling Grace. I'm investigating allegations against Rita Vance and found your name in a patient safety complaint from 8 months ago. Would you be willing to talk? He responded within 20 minutes. I'll talk, but not over messages. Call me. Sarah dialed the number he provided. I left Sterling Grace because of her, Michael said as soon as he answered. Rita Vance destroyed my career. Tell me what happened. Michael's voice was tight. I was working a night shift. Patient came in with atypical chest pain. I did an EKG, saw some changes that worried me. Nothing textbook, but enough that I wanted a cardiologist to look at it. Rita said I was overreacting, told me to monitor and recheck in 4 hours. What did you do? I documented my concerns in the chart. I told the attending, Dr. Webb, that I thought we should escalate. He sided with Rita, said I was being overzealous. Michael's breath hitched. 6 hours later, the patient had a massive MI. They coded him in the hallway. He survived, but he's got permanent heart damage. The family complained. Yeah, and Rita threw me under the bus. Said I'd misread the EKG, that I'd documented concerns after the fact to cover myself. HR believed her. The Patient Safety Committee buried it. I got written up for clinical judgment errors and started getting assigned to the worst shifts. I lasted 4 more months before I quit. Sarah's jaw clenched. Do you still have your original documentation? Every page. I knew she'd try to rewrite history, so I kept copies of everything. Can you send them to me? On one condition, Michael said. When this goes public, my name goes with it. I'm done hiding what she did. Deal. The files arrived an hour later. Sarah spread everything across her kitchen table. Jennifer's documentation, Michael's records, her own experiences. A pattern emerged. Rita hadn't just targeted Sarah. She'd systematically undermined anyone who challenged her authority. Junior nurses, protocol suggestions, clinical assessments that contradicted her judgment, and when those people pushed back, she destroyed them. Sarah picked up her phone, called Garrett. I have evidence, she said. Real evidence, not about me, about Rita. What kind of evidence? Patient safety complaints she buried, staff she drove out, a pattern of retaliation going back at least 2 years. Garrett was silent for a long moment. Send it to me. All of it. Sarah compiled everything into a single email and hit send. 30 minutes later, Garrett called back. I'm bringing this to the board. Today. Rita's allegations against you are falling apart. We reviewed the incident, she cited, and 2 of them happened on shifts when you weren't even working. The third was a medication delay that was caused by a pharmacy error, not nursing judgment. So she lied. Provably. And if what you're sending me holds up, she's done worse. Garrett's voice hardened. I'm convening an emergency board meeting at 2 p.m. I want you there. I'm on administrative leave. Not anymore. Consider yourself reinstated. Effective now. Sarah ended the call and sat back. The fight wasn't over, but the momentum had shifted. At 1:45 p.m., Sarah walked into Sterling Grace Medical Center for what felt like the 100th time in 3 days. This time, the whispers were different. People stared, but not with suspicion, with curiosity, with something that almost looked like respect. She took the elevator to the 4th floor, walked into the board conference room. Garrett was there. Morrow. Dr. Sinclair. 3 board members Sarah didn't recognize, and sitting at the far end of the table, looking brittle and furious, Rita. Sarah took a seat across from her. Rita's eyes were cold. This is harassment. I'm the victim here, and you're parading me in front of, Ms. Vance, Garrett interrupted. You're here because new information has come to light regarding your allegations against Sarah Vance. Rita's lawyer, a thin man in an expensive suit, leaned forward. My client has provided substantial documentation of... Your client lied, Morrow said flatly. She opened her laptop, turned it to face Rita. 2 of the incidents you cited occurred on dates when Sarah Vance wasn't on duty. We've confirmed that through electronic scheduling records and badge swipe data. Rita's face went pale. That's a clerical error. The dates? The dates are correct. You fabricated the incidents. Morrow pulled up another document. The third incident, the medication delay, was caused by a pharmacy dispensing error. Sarah Vance wasn't involved. The attending physician confirmed it. Rita's lawyer shuffled papers. My client may have been mistaken about specific dates, but the pattern of behavior— Let's talk about patterns, Garrett interrupted. He slid a folder across the table to Rita. We've received testimony from multiple former staff members: Jennifer Park, Michael Torres, 3 other nurses who left Sterling Grace in the past 18 months. All of them describe a pattern of retaliation, professional sabotage, and patient safety concerns being suppressed. Rita opened the folder and Sarah watched the color drain from her face. Michael Torres documented a cardiac patient you undertreated, Garrett continued. The patient coded. The family filed a complaint. You blamed Torres and had him written up. He quit 4 months later. That patient's outcome had nothing to do with— Jennifer Park suggested evidence-based protocol changes. You dismissed them without review and had her excluded from training opportunities. Rita's hands were shaking. This is a witch hunt. You're trying to destroy me to protect her. No, Garrett said quietly. We're holding you accountable for a pattern of behavior that's been documented by multiple witnesses over multiple years. One of the board members, an older woman with sharp eyes, spoke up. Ms. Vance, you've been with Sterling Grace for 12 years. In that time, 15 nurses have left the emergency department. 7 of them cited concerns about supervisory conduct in their exit interviews. You were the primary supervisor for all 7. Rita's lawyer put a hand on her arm, but she shook him off. I maintain high standards, Rita said, her voice rising. I don't coddle people. I don't make excuses for incompetence. If people can't handle the pressure, they shouldn't work in emergency medicine. High standards don't include fabricating medical errors, Morrow said. They don't include suppressing patient safety complaints. They don't include driving competent staff out of the department because they challenge your authority. Rita stood abruptly. I'm done with this. You've already made up your minds. Sit down, Garrett said, and there was steel in his voice. Rita remained standing. You have 2 options, Garrett continued. Option 1. You resign immediately. We provide a neutral reference, and this doesn't follow you. Option 2. We proceed with formal termination, and everything we've discussed here gets documented in your personnel file and reported to the state nursing board. Rita's lawyer whispered something to her. She sat down slowly. If I resign, she said, voice tight, what happens to my reputation? The news coverage? We issue a joint statement saying you've decided to pursue other opportunities. No further comment. Garrett's expression was unreadable. But you sign a non-disparagement agreement. You don't speak to the press. You don't make allegations against Sarah Vance or Sterling Grace. You walk away quietly. And if I don't? Then we fight, publicly, with everything we've found. Morrow leaned forward. Your call. Rita looked at Sarah. For a moment, something raw and hateful flickered across her face. This isn't over, she said quietly. Yes, Sarah replied. It is. Rita's lawyer whispered urgently in her ear. Finally, Rita nodded. I'll resign. Morrow slid papers across the table. Sign here. Rita signed without reading, her hand jerky and unsteady. When it was done, she stood, grabbed her bag, and walked out without another word. The door closed behind her. The room let out a collective breath. Garrett turned to Sarah. I'm sorry for all of it. Sarah didn't respond immediately. She looked around the table, at the board members who'd been silent while she was torn apart, at Morrow, who'd prioritized optics over truth, at Garrett, who'd thrown her to the wolves the moment things got difficult. Sorry isn't enough, she said finally. Garrett nodded. I know. Which is why we're implementing everything you asked for. Full departmental review, third-party oversight, policy changes. And we're offering you the trauma team position, officially, with a salary increase and signing bonus. I don't want a signing bonus. Then what do you want? Sarah thought about the question. What did she want? She wanted the last 18 months back. She wanted the quiet life she'd built before Kyle Brennan rolled through those doors. She wanted to be invisible again. But that wasn't possible. I want to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else, she said. I want the review to actually mean something, and I want a voice in how the department moves forward. Done, Garrett said immediately. Dr. Sinclair spoke up. I'm rescinding my resignation, but I'm also joining the review committee, and I'm recommending Sarah for a seat on the patient safety board. One of the board members nodded. Approved. Sarah felt the weight of it settling on her shoulders. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every nurse Rita had undermined, every patient who'd suffered because concerns were dismissed, every person who'd been driven out of a career they loved because someone with power decided they didn't belong. I'll do it, Sarah said. The meeting adjourned. Sarah walked out into the hallway and found Major Kendrick waiting. Heard Rita resigned, Kendrick said. How did you? Hospital staff gossip faster than military intelligence networks. Kendrick grinned. We're heading back to our bases tonight, but Rodriguez wanted me to give you this. She handed Sarah a challenge coin, the 455th Squadron emblem on one side, coordinates on the other. Bagram, Kendrick said, where we first met. Rodriguez says if you ever need the cavalry again, we're one call away. Sarah closed her fingers around the coin. Thank you. For everything. You'd have done the same for us. Kendrick hugged her. Stay dangerous, Ghostlight. The squadron left that evening. Sarah stood in the parking lot watching their rental car pull away and felt something shift inside her. She wasn't alone. She'd never been alone. Over the next week, the news coverage shifted. Rita's resignation was reported as a mutual parting of ways. The allegations against Sarah were quietly retracted. The hospital's review process was announced with carefully worded press releases about commitment to excellence and patient safety. Sarah returned to work on Monday. The ER felt different. People met her eyes, asked her opinion, listened when she spoke. Dr. Webb approached her on her second shift back. I'm attending a workshop on unconscious bias next month, he said without preamble. Mandatory for all attending physicians. Thought you should know. Sarah nodded. Good. I was wrong about you. I'm trying to do better. Keep trying. He left, and Sarah went back to her patient. 3 weeks later, Kyle was discharged from the hospital. Sarah was there when he left, walking slowly with a cane, Rachel on one side and Emily on the other. You saved me twice, Kyle said when they reached the exit. Third time's the charm? Sarah smiled. Let's hope there's not a third time. Emily hugged her, careful and tight. Thank you for being an angel. Sarah hugged her back. You're welcome, sweetheart. They left, and Sarah watched them go, a family intact because she'd refused to stay silent. That evening, Sarah sat in her apartment and opened her laptop. She had emails from 3 different hospitals asking if she'd consider positions with them, offers from medical consulting firms, speaking requests from nursing conferences. Her quiet life was gone, but maybe that was okay. She pulled up a blank document and started typing. Departmental Review Committee. Initial recommendations. She worked for 3 hours, outlining changes, protocol improvements, training requirements, accountability measures. When she finished, she sent the document to Garrett and Dr. Sinclair. Then she closed her laptop and looked at Emily's drawing, still taped to her refrigerator. A plane, an angel, a child's grateful scrawl. Sarah's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? A familiar voice. Male. Rough. Lieutenant Vance? This is Sergeant First Class David Morrison. I served with you in Afghanistan. Sarah frowned. Morrison. I thought, you thought I was in Chicago with the others. I was, but I stayed behind. There's something you need to know. Sarah's stomach tightened. What? I've been working with the VA, helping veterans access their service records. Last week, someone requested a full record pull on you. Name, dates of service, mission logs, the works. Who? Can't say for sure. The request came through a law firm. But it wasn't military related. It was civilian. And they were specifically looking for anything that could be used to discredit your service. Sarah's blood went cold. Rita. Rita had signed a non-disparagement agreement, but she'd found another way. Do you know what they found? Sarah asked. That's the thing. There's nothing to find. Your record's clean, but they're looking. And if they're willing to hire a law firm to dig, they're not done. Sarah gripped the phone. What do I do? Document everything. Keep your squadron close. And don't assume this is over just because she resigned. Morrison paused. Ghostlight. You made enemies by refusing to die quietly. Some people don't know how to let that go. He hung up. Sarah sat in the darkness of her apartment, the phone still in her hand. Rita had lost her job, lost her reputation, lost the fight. But she hadn't stopped fighting, and somewhere out there, she was planning her next move. Sarah set the phone down and stared at the challenge coin Kendrick had given her. If you ever need the cavalry again, we're one call away. Sarah picked up her phone and started typing. Not to Kendrick, not to the squadron, but to Patricia Morrow, Sterling Grace's HR director. We need to talk. Rita Vance is still trying to destroy my reputation. I have proof. She hit send. Then she stood, walked to her window, and looked out at the city lights. Rita wanted a war? She'd get one. But this time, Sarah wasn't fighting alone. And this time, she knew exactly what she was capable of. The phone buzzed. Morrow's response? My office, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Bring everything. Sarah smiled. Tomorrow, the real fight began. Sarah arrived at Patricia Morrow's office at 7:50 a.m. with a folder containing everything Morrison had sent her. The request for her military records, the law firm's name, the timeline showing it had been filed 3 days after Rita's resignation. Morrow was already at her desk, coffee in hand, looking like she'd been there for hours. Show me, she said without preamble. Sarah laid out the documents. Morrow read through them carefully, her expression darkening with each page. Keller and Associates, she said, tapping the law firm's letterhead. They specialize in employment litigation. Rita hired them to find ammunition for a wrongful termination lawsuit. She signed a non-disparagement agreement. She did. But requesting public records isn't disparagement, it's research. Morrow set down the papers. She's looking for something, anything, she can use to claim she was fired for exposing a fraud rather than for her own misconduct. Sarah's jaw tightened. There's nothing to find. I know. But the request itself is a problem. If she's building a case, she'll twist whatever she gets. A mission that went badly becomes proof you're incompetent. A patient you lost becomes evidence you falsified your save rate. Morrow leaned back. She's betting that mud sticks even when it's not real. So what do we do? Morrow smiled thinly. We beat her to it. She wants to make this public. We make it public first. On our terms. How? Sterling Grace is hosting a regional nursing conference in 2 weeks. 500 attendees, including media coverage. We announced the departmental reforms there, with you as the keynote speaker. Morrow's eyes were sharp. You tell your story, the real one. Military service, the treatment you endured here, how you saved Kyle Brennan. Everything. And we invite Rita to respond publicly if she dares. Sarah's stomach twisted. I'm not a public speaker. You flew medevac missions under fire. You can handle a microphone. Morrow's tone softened slightly. Sarah, Rita's counting on you staying quiet. That's how people like her win. They make noise while their targets hide. Don't hide. Sarah thought about the past 3 weeks. The whispers in the hallway, the reporters outside her apartment, the way her name had become a controversy instead of just a name. Hiding hadn't worked. Staying quiet hadn't protected her. I'll do it, she said. Morrow nodded. Good. We'll prep you. Media training, speech coaching, the works. By the time you walk on that stage, you'll be ready. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Sarah worked her shifts in the trauma bay, which felt almost normal now. Dr. Webb consulted her on difficult cases. New residents asked for her input. The department ran smoother than it had in months. But in the evenings, she prepared. Morrow brought in a communications consultant named David Reeves, former military public affairs officer, now working in crisis management. He was blunt, efficient, and didn't tolerate excuses. You're not selling yourself, he told Sarah during their first session. You're telling the truth. Facts, timeline, outcomes. No emotion unless it serves the point. What's the point? The competence doesn't care about your age, your gender, or how loud you are. It cares about results. You got results. They ignored them. People almost died because of it. That's the story. They practiced. Sarah stumbled through early drafts, her voice shaking, her hands clammy. Again, Reeves said. Slower. Look at the audience, not the floor. She ran through the speech 15 times that first night. Her throat was raw by the end, but the words came easier. Better? Reeves said. But you're still apologizing. Stop that. You don't apologize for being good at your job. I'm not apologizing. You are. Every time you say, I just, or I only, or I happen to notice, cut that out. You diagnosed a critical injury. You saved a life. Own it. Sarah tried again, removing the qualifiers. Reeves nodded. That's it. That's the voice you need. By the end of the first week, Sarah could deliver the speech without notes. By the end of the second week, she believed every word of it. But 3 days before the conference, everything shifted. Sarah received an email from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You should know what you're defending." Sarah opened it. Inside was a scanned document, a military incident report from September 2019. Sarah's breath caught. She knew this report. She'd written it herself. It detailed a medevac flight where a patient, a 21-year-old soldier named Private Lucas Grant, had died in transit despite her efforts. Catastrophic injuries from an IED. She'd done everything right, but his wounds were too severe. He'd coded twice. She'd brought him back both times. The third time, his heart didn't restart. Number 6 on her list of losses. Below the scanned report was a message. Your perfect record isn't so perfect. You lost patience. You failed, and now you're being held up as a hero? The public deserves to know the truth. I'll be at the conference. Let's see if you're brave enough to tell them about the ones who didn't make it. It wasn't signed, but Sarah didn't need a signature. Rita. Sarah forwarded the email to Morrow and Reeves without comment. Reeves called her 20 minutes later. She's trying to rattle you, he said. Classic intimidation. She wants you second-guessing yourself before the conference. It's not a lie, Sarah said quietly. I did lose patience. Of course you did. You flew 47 combat missions. Some people don't make it. That's not failure. That's reality. His voice was firm. Rita's betting you'll be ashamed of it. Don't give her that. How do I not be ashamed of losing someone? Reeves was quiet for a moment. You honor them by telling the truth. You lost 11 patients out of 58 total transports. That's an 81% save rate in conditions where most people would have lost half. Private Grant didn't die because you failed. He died because war destroys people. You gave him a chance. That's all anyone could do. Sarah closed her eyes. What if people see it as proof I'm not who they think I am? Then they're wrong. And you correct them. Reeves paused. Sarah, heroes aren't people who never fail. They're people who keep showing up after they do. That's you. So when Rita brings this up, and she will, you look her in the eye and tell her the truth. You lost people. You remember them. You carry them. And you keep saving lives anyway. Sarah spent that night rewriting her speech. She added a section she'd been avoiding. The losses. The names. The weight of carrying 11 people who didn't come home. When she finished, she sent it to Reeves. He called back within the hour. Perfect, he said. Don't change a word. The conference was held at the Minneapolis Convention Center. Sarah arrived early, her stomach churning, her hands cold despite the warm morning. The main ballroom held 500 seats. Most were already filled. Nurses, administrators, journalists, medical students. Camera crews lined the back wall. Local news stations, a national health network. This wasn't just regional anymore. This was big. Morrow met her backstage. Rita's here, she said quietly. Sarah's head snapped up. Where? Third row, center. She brought supporters, 3 nurses from Sterling Grace who worked under her, and she's got her attorney with her. Sarah's pulse spiked. She's planning something. Absolutely. My guess? She'll wait until Q&A, then stand up and accuse you of lying about your save rate. She'll use that incident report to paint you as a fraud who hides failures. Morrow's expression was calm. Let her. You've got the truth. She's got desperation. Sarah took a shaky breath. Reeves appeared, handed her a bottle of water. Drink, breathe. Remember, you've already won. You're standing on that stage because you earned it. She's sitting in the audience because she lost. Don't forget that. The conference host, a regional nursing director named Ellen Graves, took the stage. She was in her 60s, gray-haired, with the kind of presence that commanded immediate respect. Good morning, everyone. We gather today at a critical moment for our profession. Questions about workplace culture, veteran integration, and patient safety have dominated recent headlines, and at the center of those questions is someone whose story has sparked necessary conversations. Ellen paused. Please welcome Lieutenant Sarah Vance. Applause filled the room. Sarah walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding. She couldn't see individual faces, just shapes and movement, and the red glow of recording cameras. She reached the podium, adjusted the microphone, and looked out at the crowd. Rita sat in the third row, arms crossed, face set in stone. The three nurses beside her wore matching expressions of contempt. Rita's attorney, a man in an expensive suit, had a legal pad open on his lap. Sarah found her voice. My name is Sarah Vance. 4 years ago, I left the United States Air Force after serving 3 tours as a flight nurse in Afghanistan. I came to Minneapolis because I wanted to disappear. I wanted to be normal. I wanted to forget what I'd seen and done and carry with me every single day. She paused, letting the silence settle. I changed my name legally to Sarah Calloway. I applied to Sterling Grace Medical Center under that name. I disclosed my military service in my application. I provided my DD-214 discharge papers. I listed my certifications. Everything was documented and verified during the hiring process. A murmur ran through the crowd. For 18 months, I worked in the emergency department. I was assigned routine tasks, vitals, IV starts, documentation. I was excluded from trauma cases despite my background in critical care transport. When I made clinical recommendations, they were dismissed or ignored. When I asked for advancement opportunities, I was told I wasn't ready. Sarah's eyes found Rita's. I was treated this way not because of my performance, but because of assumptions. I was young. I was quiet. I didn't fit the image of what an experienced nurse should look like. My supervisor believed I was incompetent. She made that clear through her assignments, her comments, and her decisions about my role. Rita shifted in her seat but said nothing. 3 weeks ago, a patient named Kyle Brennan came into our trauma bay with an impalement injury from a construction accident. While the medical team focused on the obvious wound, I noticed secondary symptoms: rigid abdomen, dropping blood pressure, skin tone changes. I raised concerns about internal bleeding. I was dismissed by the attending physician and told to document, not diagnose. Sarah's voice steadied. Kyle Brennan was minutes from dying when someone finally listened to what I was saying. An ultrasound confirmed massive internal hemorrhage. He was rushed to surgery. He survived because I refused to stay quiet, even when being quiet would have been easier. The room was completely silent now. Afterward, the truth came out. I wasn't an inexperienced second-year nurse. I was a decorated combat veteran with 47 critical care transport missions under my belt. And Kyle Brennan had been one of my patients 7 years earlier in Afghanistan. I'd saved his life then, too. Sarah watched Rita's jaw clench. My supervisor, Rita Vance, who is here today, responded to this revelation by accusing me of fabricating my military service record. When 7 members of my former squadron flew to Minneapolis and provided verification, when the Air Force Personnel Center confirmed every detail of my service, those allegations fell apart. So she changed tactics. She claimed I'd made medical errors that the hospital covered up to protect me. One of the journalists in the back was typing furiously. When that was proven false, when hospital records showed the incidents she cited either didn't involve me or didn't happen at all, she hired a law firm to request my full military records through a Freedom of Information Act filing. She was looking for something, anything she could use to discredit me. Rita's attorney put a hand on her arm, but she shook him off. 3 days ago, Sarah continued, I received an email containing a military incident report from one of my missions. A patient named Private Lucas Grant died in my care during a medevac flight in September 2019. The email implied this proved I was a fraud, that my record was a lie, that I'd been hiding my failures while claiming to be a hero. She pulled the report from her folder, held it up. This report is real. Private Grant did die. He was 21 years old. He'd been hit by an IED during a patrol in Helmand Province. His injuries were catastrophic: severed femoral artery, collapsed lung, massive internal bleeding, traumatic brain injury. I worked on him for 90 minutes in the back of a C-130 cargo aircraft, while we flew through a sandstorm with 0 visibility. He coded 3 times. I brought him back twice. The 3rd time, I couldn't. Sarah's voice cracked slightly, but she didn't stop. Private Grant was the sixth patient I lost during my service. By the time I left Afghanistan, that number was 11. 11 people I couldn't save despite everything I knew, everything I tried, everything I was trained to do. I remember all their names. I remember their faces. I remember what I said to them in their final moments, and I carry them with me every single day. Tears were streaming down faces in the audience. Some people weren't even trying to hide it. Rita Vance sent me that report to shame me, to make me afraid to stand here and tell you who I am, because she believes that losing patients makes me a failure, that imperfection disqualifies competence, that if you're not perfect, you're not worthy. Sarah looked directly at Rita. She's wrong. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. I've had outcomes I wish I could change. But I've also saved 47 lives in conditions where most people would have saved none. I've worked trauma bays where supplies ran out and backup was hours away. I've flown through combat zones where the aircraft took fire while I was trying to place a chest tube. I've held people together, literally, when there was nothing else I could do except refuse to let them go alone. She turned back to the audience. I've earned my place in this profession, not because I'm perfect, but because I show up, because I keep learning, because I care more about the patient in front of me than about protecting my ego or my image. Sarah's voice rose. Kyle Brennan almost died because an attending physician assumed I didn't know what I was talking about. A man named Michael Torres watched his patient code because his clinical judgment was overruled by a supervisor who valued hierarchy over safety. How many others are out there right now? How many competent people are being dismissed because they don't look the part, or sound the part, or fit someone's narrow definition of expertise? She gripped the podium. Sterling Grace Medical Center is implementing reforms, departmental reviews, accountability measures, unconscious bias training. That's a start. But real change happens when we stop treating competence like it belongs to the loudest person in the room, when we listen to the quiet voices, when we value results over politics, when we accept that being wrong is part of learning and being humble enough to listen might save someone's life. Sarah looked out at the crowd. I didn't ask to be here. I didn't want to be a symbol or a controversy. I wanted to do my job and go home. But silence protects the people who shouldn't be protected. It enables the Rita Vances of the world to keep destroying careers and endangering patients. And I'm done with that. She took a breath. So I'm not staying quiet anymore, and I'm asking you not to either. If you see someone being dismissed because they don't fit the mold, speak up. If you witness retaliation against staff who raise safety concerns, report it. If you're the one being silenced, find your voice and use it. Because patients deserve better than our egos. They deserve our best, regardless of where that best comes from. Sarah stepped back from the podium. Thank you. The applause started slowly, then built into a roar. People stood. The ovation went on for nearly 3 minutes. Rita remained seated, her face a mask of fury and something else. Humiliation. Ellen Graves returned to the stage. We'll now open the floor for questions and comments. Please use the microphones in the aisles. Rita stood immediately, moving to the nearest microphone before anyone else could. I have a comment, she said, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Ellen nodded. Go ahead. Everything Sarah Vance just said is a character assassination designed to destroy my reputation and career. Rita's hands gripped the microphone stand. I dedicated 12 years to Sterling Grace Medical Center. I maintained standards. I protected patients from incompetence and inexperience. And now I'm being vilified because I dared to question someone who hid behind a fake name and a military record that conveniently can't be fully verified. It was verified, someone called from the audience, by the Air Force, by her squadron, by multiple sources. Rita ignored them. I raised legitimate concerns about patient safety, about a nurse who changed her identity and wouldn't explain why, about someone who might have been hiding something in her past. That was my job as a supervisor, to protect patients. By fabricating medical errors? Another voice called. Rita's face flushed. I didn't fabricate anything. I documented concerns based on nothing. A woman stood in the middle section. Sarah recognized her from Michael Torres's documentation, the daughter of the patient Rita had undertreated 8 months ago. My father almost died because you overruled a nurse who knew something was wrong, the woman continued, her voice carrying through the room. Michael Torres told you my father needed cardiac monitoring. You said he was being dramatic. 8 hours later, my father had a massive heart attack in your ER. He survived, but he'll never be the same. He can't work. He can't play with his grandchildren because you were more concerned with being right than with being safe." Rita's face went white. "That situation was complicated. The assessment was correct," the woman interrupted. "Michael was right. You were wrong. Just like you were wrong about Sarah Vance. Just like you've been wrong about how many other people." Another voice from the back. "I worked under Rita for 6 years at Sterling Grace. I watched her drive out 3 competent nurses because they questioned her decisions. She didn't mentor them or teach them. She undermined them until they quit." Then another. "She blocked my promotion because I suggested a protocol change based on current research. Said I was too inexperienced to understand how things really worked." A man stood near the front. "I'm a physician who worked with Rita in the ER. She routinely dismissed nursing assessments, especially from younger staff. I went along with it because she'd been there longer and I assumed she knew better. I was wrong, and patients paid the price." The testimonies came one after another. People Sarah had never met, standing up and speaking out. Nurses Rita had bullied, doctors who'd enabled her, patients and families who'd suffered. Rita tried to respond, but her voice was drowned out by the wave of accounts. Her attorney stood, trying to intervene. "This is turning into a public lynching. My client has rights. Your client has the same rights everyone else has," Ellen Graves said firmly. "The right to speak, and the right to hear the truth, even when it's uncomfortable." Rita's face crumbled. She looked around the room, at the 500 people watching her, at the cameras recording everything, at the journalist from the National Health Network, who was probably already drafting the headline. She grabbed her bag and walked toward the exit. "Ms. Vance," Ellen called after her. "Walking away doesn't change what happened." Rita stopped at the door, turned back. "I did my job," she said, her voice breaking. "I did what I thought was right." "No," Sarah said from the stage. "You did what made you feel powerful. There's a difference." Rita stared at her for a long moment. Then she left, the door closing behind her with a hollow thud. The room was absolutely silent. Then Ellen spoke. "I think we've all witnessed something important here today. We've seen what happens when power goes unchecked, when ego trumps evidence, when protecting our image becomes more important than protecting patients." She looked at Sarah. "And we've seen what courage looks like when someone refuses to stay invisible." More applause. Quieter this time, but deeper. The conference continued. More speakers. More discussions about culture change and accountability. But everyone knew what the story would be. Sarah spent the next hour answering questions from attendees, accepting handshakes and hugs from strangers who shared their own stories of being dismissed and overlooked and silenced. A young nurse, maybe 24, approached with tears in her eyes. "I've been thinking about quitting," she said. "My supervisor treats me like I'm stupid. But after hearing you, I think maybe I'll stay, maybe I'll fight." Sarah took her hands. "Fight. You belong here." When the conference finally ended, Morrow found her backstage. "Rita's lawyer just called," Morrow said. "She's withdrawing her lawsuit. No wrongful termination claim, no allegations. She's done." Sarah felt something unclench in her chest. "It's over?" "It's over, legally anyway. The court of public opinion might take longer." Morrow smiled slightly. "But I think you won that one too." Sarah sat down, suddenly exhausted. Reeves appeared with water and a protein bar. "Eat. You've been running on adrenaline for 3 hours." Sarah ate mechanically, her mind still processing everything that had happened. Her phone buzzed. A text from Kyle. Watched the live stream. "You were incredible. Emily wants to know if you'll come to dinner this weekend. Rachel's making lasagna." Sarah smiled and typed back, "I'll be there." That evening, Sarah drove to the hospital. Not because she had a shift, but because she needed to see it. Needed to ground herself in the reality of the work. The ER was busy. Friday night chaos, ambulances rolling in, trauma bays full. She stood in the hallway, watching the organized frenzy, and felt something settle inside her. This was where she belonged. Not hiding, not invisible. Here. Dr. Sinclair spotted her, walked over. "Saw the conference coverage," Sinclair said. "You destroyed her." "I told the truth. She destroyed herself." "Semantics," Sinclair smiled. The board formally approved your position on the Patient Safety Committee. First meeting's next Tuesday. They also want you to lead the bias training initiative. Sarah blinked. Lead it? You're the most qualified person in this building to talk about what happens when bias overrides judgment. Own it. A nurse rushed past, calling for assistance with a critical patient in Bay 4. Sinclair turned to help, then paused. You coming in? Sarah looked at the trauma bay, at the organized chaos, at the work that needed doing. Yeah, she said. I'm coming in. She grabbed a pair of gloves from the dispenser and followed Sinclair into the bay. The patient was a teenage girl, car accident, possible internal injuries. Sarah assessed her quickly, methodically, and when she called for additional scans based on subtle symptoms, Dr. Webb, who was running the case, listened immediately. Get me a CT, Webb ordered. Abdomen and pelvis. Stat. The scans showed a splenic laceration that would have been missed otherwise. The girl went to surgery. She survived. After the case, Webb pulled Sarah aside. You saved another one, he said quietly. We saved another one, Sarah corrected. You listened. I'm trying to. Webb's expression was complicated. I'm trying to be better, less arrogant, more open. Keep trying. It's working. 2 weeks later, Sarah received a letter in the mail. It was from Private Lucas Grant's mother. Dear Lieutenant Vance, my name is Margaret Grant. I'm Lucas's mother. I saw your speech at the nursing conference. Someone sent me the video. I wanted you to know that I've never blamed you for Lucas's death. The Army told me what you did for him, how you fought to keep him alive for 90 minutes, how you refused to give up even when his injuries were catastrophic. They said you were extraordinary, that Lucas wasn't alone at the end because of you. Lucas would have been 28 this year. I think about him every day, every single day. But I take comfort knowing that in his final moments, he had someone who cared, someone who tried, someone who saw him as a person, not just a casualty. Thank you for that. And thank you for continuing to fight for others, even when it costs you. Even when people try to use Lucas's death as a weapon against you. You honor my son's memory every time you save someone else. Every single time. With gratitude and respect, Margaret Grant. Sarah read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. She folded it carefully and placed it in the box with her military records, next to the squadron photo and the challenge coin and Emily's drawings. Reminders of who she'd been, who she still was, who she was becoming. 3 months later, Kyle Brennan walked into Sterling Grace's ER without a cane. Rachel and Emily were with him, and Emily was carrying a plate of cookies covered in plastic wrap. Sarah was at the nurse's station when she saw them. We were in the neighborhood, Kyle said, grinning. Thought we'd stop by. Emily ran over, nearly dropping the cookies, and hugged Sarah tight. She was taller now, her hair longer, her face changing from little girl to young person. I made these for you, Emily said, holding up the plate. Chocolate chip. Mom helped, but I did most of it. Sarah took the cookies. Thank you, sweetheart. These look amazing. Rachel smiled. We wanted to tell you in person. We're moving to Minneapolis permanently. Kyle got a job with a construction safety firm. He'll be training people on accident prevention and workplace safety. Figured if I survived twice, I should probably help other people not need surviving, Kyle added. And we wanted to be close. To you. To the person who gave us our family back. Sarah felt her throat tighten. You didn't have to move here for me. We didn't move for you, Rachel said. We moved for us. But you're part of that now, part of our family. Whether you like it or not. Emily grabbed Sarah's hand. Can we visit you sometimes? Like a lot? Anytime, Sarah said, her voice thick. Anytime at all. They stayed for an hour, talking and laughing in the break room while Sarah's colleagues wandered in and out, some stopping to chat, others just smiling at the scene. When they finally left, Emily hugged Sarah one more time. You're my hero, she whispered. Sarah hugged her back, holding on maybe a second longer than necessary. You're mine too. After they were gone, Sarah stood in the hallway and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Connected, grounded, home. That night, Sarah stood in her apartment, the same apartment she'd moved into 4 years ago when she was trying to disappear, and looked around. The blank walls now held photographs. The squadron at Bagram, Kyle and his family at the hospital, Emily's drawings taped to the refrigerator. Her DD-214 hung framed above her desk, no longer hidden in a box but displayed openly. A life no longer built around hiding but around showing up. She pulled out her laptop and opened her email. 73 new messages. Nurses from across the country who'd seen the conference video. Some asking for advice about toxic supervisors. Others sharing their own stories of being dismissed and underestimated. A few from veterans struggling to transition into civilian healthcare. Sarah opened the first email and started typing a response. Then the next. And the next. She answered every single one, even though it took her until 2 a.m. Because that was the thing about stepping into the light, you became visible to everyone who'd been searching in the dark. Everyone who needed to know they weren't alone. Everyone who needed proof that fighting back was possible. And she was done hiding from that responsibility. 6 months later, Sarah was invited to speak at a National Veterans Healthcare Summit in Washington, D.C. 2,000 attendees. Live television coverage, panel discussions with VA administrators and military healthcare leadership. She stood on a stage in the Capitol and told her story again, not because it was easy, it never got easy, but because it was necessary. Afterward, a young veteran approached her, maybe 25, wearing an Army veteran cap, carrying herself with the careful posture of someone who'd seen combat. Lieutenant Vance, I'm Alexis Martinez, former Army medic. I separated 6 months ago, and I'm trying to find work in civilian healthcare, but they keep telling me I'm not qualified, even though I've done everything they're asking for and more. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Sarah looked at her and saw herself 4 years ago. Qualified, but dismissed. Experienced, but invisible. You're not doing anything wrong, Sarah said. They're not looking. They're making assumptions based on what they think you should be instead of seeing what you are. So what do? You keep showing them. You document everything. You find allies who'll vouch for you. You refuse to shrink yourself to fit their expectations. Sarah pulled out her card. Call me Monday. I know some people who are actually looking for competent medics. People who value what you bring instead of dismissing it. Alexis's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. I've been feeling like maybe I don't belong in healthcare anymore. Like maybe I should just give up. Don't. We need you. Sarah put a hand on her shoulder. We don't leave people behind, remember that. On the flight home, Sarah stared out the window at the clouds 30,000 feet below and thought about everything that had happened. The dismissal, the fight, the vindication, the aftermath. She thought about Rita, who'd resigned and disappeared from public life entirely, who'd lost everything she'd built because she'd valued control over truth, ego over safety, image over substance. She thought about Dr. Webb, who was actually listening now, who'd apologized multiple times and seemed to genuinely mean it, who was trying, however imperfectly, to be better. She thought about the nurses who'd reached out to her, the hundreds of messages, the calls for advice, the requests for mentorship and guidance. She thought about the patients who'd been saved because someone finally listened, because competence was allowed to speak, because the culture was slowly, painfully changing. None of it had been smooth, none of it had been easy, but it had been worth it. Because the truth was, competence didn't shout. It didn't demand attention. It didn't need validation from people who couldn't recognize it. It just showed up, did the work, and trusted that eventually, if you refused to stay quiet, someone would notice. And when they didn't? When they dismissed you, underestimated you, tried to bury you under fake allegations and manufactured scandals, you made them notice. Not with arrogance, not with cruelty, not by becoming what they were, but with truth, with results, with the undeniable reality of lives saved and work done and competence proven over and over until even the most stubborn skeptics couldn't look away. Sarah closed her eyes and thought about Private Lucas Grant, about the 11 others she'd lost, about the 47 she'd saved during her military service, about Kyle Brennan, alive and whole, and building a new life in Minneapolis with his family, about every person she'd helped since stepping into the light, the patients in the trauma bay, the nurses she'd mentored, the veterans she'd guided through the transition to civilian healthcare. She'd spent 4 years trying to disappear, trying to be small and quiet and forgettable. Turned out some people weren't meant to disappear. Some people were meant to stand in the open, visible and unafraid, and light the way for everyone else still hiding in the shadows. Sarah Vance, Ghostlight, was one of them. And she was just getting started. Because the thing about fighting your way into the light was that once you got there, you realized how many people were still trapped in the dark, still being dismissed, still being told they didn't belong, still believing the lies that small-minded people told about their worth. And if you'd made it through, if you'd survived the fight and come out the other side, you had a responsibility to turn around and pull others through, not because it was easy, but because it was right. Sarah opened her eyes and looked out at the endless sky. Somewhere down there, someone was sitting in an ER or a clinic or a hospital, being dismissed by a supervisor who couldn't see past their own assumptions. Someone competent and qualified and capable was being told they weren't enough. New message from the Patient Safety Committee. Meeting scheduled for Tuesday. Agenda item: expanding the bias training program to all departments, not just emergency medicine. Sarah smiled and typed a response with her recommendations. Then she closed her laptop and looked out the window at the city coming into view below. Home. Not the place she'd run to 4 years ago to disappear, but the place she'd chosen to stay and fight and build something better. The place where she'd finally stopped hiding who she was and started becoming who she was meant to be. The plane touched down. Sarah gathered her things and walked off into whatever came next. Ready, unafraid, visible.